Freemasonry, chaos magic, what have they got in common? I'm going to be speaking with Lua Valentia. She's an author of books on chaos magic and the founder of the Specular system, also a chaos magic system. I'm Angel Miller. I'm the author of The Three Stages of Initiatic Spirituality and The Path of the Warrior Mystic, among other books.
The last video that you posted on your channel got a lot of comments and shares and everything. So,
Yes, right. So that video was exploring the prehistory of chaos magic, particularly as Freemasonry as a foundation of chaos magic, and I think we're going to dive into a little bit more of the similarities between them, and maybe some differences as well. But I think that's our plan today.
that was one comment that caught my attention. They said, "Isn't chaos the source of everything?" So I think people confuse the meaning of chaos as the primordial god and the historical fact that Freemasonry came before chaos magic. So perhaps can you
Right.
just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so obviously orders such as the Ordo Templi Orientis was founded by two Freemasons and originally was founded as an Academia Masonica. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, also founded by Freemasons. And some people think that, well, that's just sort of a coincidence. And Freemasonry, Aleister Crowley was a Scottish Rite Freemason, irregular Freemason to be technical, but and also joined the Masonic irregular Blue Lodge in Paris as well, which is the entered apprentice fellow craft and master mason. So all of these people were Freemasons. A.E. Waite was a Freemason as well, many others, co-Masonry as well, influencing or being sort of fused with Theosophy. But people think, oh well, that's just some weird coincidence. But actually, the modern occult world is largely modeled on Freemasonry. So you have degrees because degrees came out of Freemasonry. Freemasonry was influenced by ideas of Rosicrucianism and alchemy later on during the 18th century, but then because it absorbed all this, it kind of pushed it back out into the occult world. So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn degree system is based on an order called the Order of the Golden Rosy Cross, which only initiated Freemasons during the 18th century. It took the degree structure from there via the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, which is often seen as a forerunner of the Golden Dawn. And again, that society only initiates Freemasons. And it's not just that there's some historical connection, there's also a philosophical connection. What they were studying in the Societas Rosicruciana was codified in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So things like this.
So, so yeah, so though chaos is a Greek god, let's say, is a representation of the universe breathing.
Yeah,
Actually, chaos magic only started in the 70s. It's a new concept. And talking about concept, the first similarity or maybe difference, paradigm shifting. So how does Freemasonry see this concept of changing paradigms or
right.
changing the way you think, or is this very, because we have from an outsider perspective, this concept of Freemasonry being so traditional and very rigid, and
Right.
is there
Yeah.
a place for discussion, or is there a place for shifting paradigms at all, or everything is all about tradition and keeping the appearances?
Yeah, so let me just address that point first. I'm the editor-in-chief of Fraternal Review, a Masonic magazine, and last month we put out an issue on subculture, looking at heavy metal, and I wrote an article on the Temple of Psychic Youth. So it depends where you are. In England, it's probably a little bit more traditional. In America, yes, there are a lot of traditional lodges, and if you go and if you're out in the middle of nowhere in Texas, be prepared to talk about baseball and eat chicken wings. But there is and there always has been a level of Freemasons who are interested in mysteries, interested in things that are much more radical and exciting. And it's not as fringy as people think. In regard to paradigm shifting, maybe we should just say that paradigm shifting in chaos magic is one of the sort of notions or techniques that, I want to become wealthy, so I'm going to paradigm shift and live my life and believe as a, let's say, a Wall Street banker to get the cash that I want to get, or I want to manifest love, so I'm going to be a devotee of some, a goddess of love for 6 months until that manifests, and I'm going to believe all of the things I'm supposed to believe, and I'm going to dress as I'm supposed to dress, and do all the rituals I'm supposed to do, and this kind of thing. In Freemasonry, yeah, there's not a specific technique of paradigm shifting, but if you look at Freemasonry as a whole, there is very definite paradigm shifting, and that would be through the rituals. So it's not often mentioned, but even the different rites of Freemasonry have different calendars. So if you go and join a Blue Lodge, again, entered apprentice, fellow craft master mason, then technically the calendar is Anno Lucis, which means the year of light, and that is dated 4,000 years before our current calendar. Or if you join the Order of the Temple, which is or you might call it the Knights Templar degree, which is a little bit more of a casual term, but you could call it that based on the sort of history and mythology, a little bit of the Knights Templar. It's largely Christian orientated, but there they also have a calendar called Anno Ordinis, the year of the order from the beginning of the Knights Templar, and then the Scottish Rite has Anno Monday, the the year of the world. So, and all of these begin at different times. So you're actually entering mentally or psychologically or ritualistically into a different calendar, not just a different environment. But so the craft ritual of the Blue Lodge is based on Solomon's Temple and the building of Solomon's Temple, but then the Knights Templar degree is much more, you know, you're part of this nightly pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And then other degrees might be different. One is talking about the Kabbalah or alchemy, or the Rose Quartz degree, for example. You go through these three different rooms, a red, black, and white room, and uh, there's an obvious Hermetic alchemical symbolism to that. And you're sort of going through this transformation. So yeah, so the rituals themselves are kind of, in a sense, paradigm shifts, because you're not only in different places, seeing different symbols, but you're actually, in some cases, located in different times.
That's very interesting. And another thing I would like to add about paradigm shifting is the challenge yourself aspect about it.
Hmm.
So in Chaos Magic also sometimes we challenge ourselves to completely believe and behave like another person. And there are several techniques one can use to do so. For instance, you could get your dice, number the dice, and choose a random religion, and just engage fully as that person and think, how would this person in this religion behave, think, and act, and just go to their church, get to know their culture and all the aspects of being that person. I know a girl in Brazil, she's the most chaos magician I've ever met in my life. She wrote several different books about chaos magic and also one with me, Banjo Dooley, her name. And she would do that a lot. She would choose a religion and learn everything she could with that religion, about that religion, and
Hmm.
she would become that person to the point that she would say, no, now I'm this, but you would know that she would always change and challenge herself.
Hmm.
And In Speculoos Coven, we have a day in the year that we challenge our beliefs and behave completely different. Um, let's say you have a restriction in your meals, or you would never eat something, and in this particular day you do challenge yourself to do this, to eat something different, goes somewhere different. And another thing as well I would like to to bring here is a little bit about Discordianism. Even though Discordianism is not 100% chaos magic, but it's very close,
Yeah.
and we kind of see ourselves as twins at some point. So in the Principia Discordia, there is a calendar, and it's very fun actually. I really think everybody should check this calendar. But there are days, holidays, they're called things like Monk Day, Chaoflux, Disco Flux, and they have this a whole thing about bureaucracy, and because there's nothing more chaotic and difficult than bureaucracy. And
Hmm.
Discordianism is all about Aries and bringing
Yeah.
discordia and being a mischief in this world. And so, and you also can invent your own holidays with Discordianism. It's kind of difficult to understand how this calendar works. But it's fun, and just check it out if you guys are interested in mythology and Aries and just a little bit, if you are a mischief at heart. So the other one that has everything to do with paradigm shifting is belief as a tool. And
Yeah.
this one,
Yeah.
some people hate it because
Hmm.
the majority of the people I've known, they see as belief, they see belief as something they cannot control. It's a feeling.
Right. Yeah.
I believe with my heart in God. So how would I see belief as a tool? It seems immoral to the majority of the people. They
Hmm.
think tools are just something that you use and discard, and you don't take anything seriously. So how does Freemasonry see belief?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So, there are
Because you,
things
you, you
you're
must believe in something, don't you?
right. That's right. You must believe in a supreme being. Whatever that supreme being is up to you. So, you do find some lodges, and I've seen this in the Scottish Rite Building in Washington, D.C. as well, where, the Masonic altar will have a Bible on it, but also the Torah and the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and, other holy books as well. Because it's not proselytizing that you should believe this particular God. But I think chaos magic or chaos magician might say, well, I'm going to adopt this belief, right? I'm going to adopt the belief that I'm wealthy so that I can attract money to me. And that is a practice in the positive thinking movement as well, or mind metaphysics as well, where they adopt the belief that, well, I'm already wealthy, I'm already married with two children, and this kind of thing, and I'm very successful in this particular world, and I feel that. And will imagine that they're right there in the future, experiencing it and how I feel and this kind of thing. And so belief as a tool is not limited to chaos magic. It's also integral. It may even be almost the entire practice of mind metaphysics as well, or positive thinking. But in Freemasonry, it's yes, you have to believe in a supreme being. But I think that the point or the practice is that your belief changes as you contemplate the Masonic symbols, and that's what gives you, confidence to go forth into the world and make the right impression on it. So, for example, it seems like a small, even maybe mediocre thing, but there's the 24-inch gauge, which is we would call a ruler. And then conceptually, it's divided into three equal parts. So you have eight, eight, and eight. And so that represents the hours of the day. So you have 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and another 8 hours, they would say, for God or the supreme being. In reality, no one is, praying 8 hours a day, of course. So, but it gives you the idea that, okay, I need to work a certain amount, I need to sleep, I need to do other things as well. I need to, harmonize my day so that I can really move forward. Because some people work 12 hours a day and they don't get any more done than if they had worked 8 or 9. And some people work 1 hour a day or none a day, and their lives are out of balance either way. So these sorts of things, contemplating these symbols or emblems, helps you to, move forward in life with a bit more confidence. And the more confidence, of course, that you have, the more belief in that you have that you can, accomplish something. Not that Freemasonry is orientated towards, just towards success in the world. That's not the case. But when you think about these things, or let's say that, the skull and crossbones, or whatever it may be, or a skull, you think about your own mortality, well, then you have the belief that, okay, I thought about my mortality, I thought about my death. Now I know what's important to me, and certain things are not really that important, and some things are, and I can focus on those things, and your mind changes, and then your belief changes. So belief is a tool that is true, and it is a tool for everyone, but let's say, an athlete who has certain tools, like the sneakers or certain techniques of running or whatever it may be. But then the better he gets, the more he believes or she believes that they can achieve something and can do something, and that itself makes them more able to do it. So it is a tool or a technique to a certain degree, whether we like to think of it as that or not. But I think Freemasonry and other things like athletics departs from positive thinking and chaos magic in that it's more of a process and not something that's just adopted. Although, you might say, well, don't you really believe that you are in Solomon's temple in some respect when you are in the ritual? And there is an element of that, of course.
Yes, definitely. I see belief as a tool, something very important to understand. If you just take your feelings into consideration, you can be misguided and you can let yourself go. Because nowadays we have a buffet of beliefs,
Hmm.
and many of them are there to siphon your energy to make you anger or afraid of something.
Yes, that's
So
right.
you have this chip on your brain, and I'm not talking about Elon Musk's futurism. I'm talking about people who truly believe that they are controlled. So this belief comes from a deep fear, and
Hmm.
sometimes some beliefs come from anger. And this is in politics, this is in every past aspect of our lives, right? And these emotions mislead us. They sometimes freeze us and disempower us. So we have two aspects, two ways of seeing belief as a tool. Something you can use against people, and something that you can understand in order to empower yourself. Who
Hmm.
would you rather be? Personally, if I have a buffet of beliefs and a chaos magician is very knowledgeable, and some of them are, but should be knowledgeable and should choose wisely, not from the feelings, but within reason. And people forget about it. They think spirituality is the opposite of logic. They think spirituality is all about feelings, revelations, epiphanies.
Hmm.
Okay, but one should be able to logically understand what is going on. And if there is truly a buffet of beliefs, I'm going to choose those. They're going to empower me to become the better version of myself, the best version I could possibly be. So I see belief as a tool in the way that I see the results. I put the results before everything else. And of course, people can interpret this as something very cold, very and I don't mind. I understand they see this as cold, but I rather be misinterpreted than misguided.
Hmm.
This doesn't make any sense.
Yes, yes. Well, what you said about logic reminded me, in a strange way, about a hypnotist called Emile Coué, who was actually one of the sort of, in a sense, one of the early pioneers of the positive thinking movement. He was also a pharmacist, and when he would dispense medicine to people that came into his pharmacy, he noticed that if he spoke well about it, about the medicine, they would get better quicker. And that's why he ended up studying hypnotism. But he had this really interesting comment. He said, if you put a plank of wood on the ground, you can walk along it without any fear, and it's not difficult. You easily walk up and down the plank, no problem. But if you put it high up, on a couple of step ladders, suddenly it's frightening, and a lot of people can't cross the plank. And he said, in the battle of will and imagination, that imagination wins, and you have to imagine yourself crossing the plank. But it's not just imagination, it's also, as you would say, it's a matter of logic, right? It's actually no more difficult. Logically, it's no more difficult to cross the plank when it's high up than it is when it's on the ground or an inch off the ground. But suddenly you're afraid of it for actually no real reason.
Fear is a very important and dangerous tool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and getting back to belief as a tool, a lot of people, and Emile Coué would say this, people hypnotize themselves all of the time, telling themselves that they can't do something, and some people, of course, believe they can do anything, and it does because they're psychopaths or whatever, and it doesn't work out. They end up in bad situations. But for the for the people who keep telling themselves they can't do it, or then no, it's not me, I would never be able to achieve that, or whatever, for no logical reason, just because they're afraid or they've been told no, or whatever it is. For those people, the belief as a tool, the right belief will be a decisive factor in what they achieve in life and what they can experience in life. So
Absolutely. And now I already mentioned it, but results magic. So in Chaos Magic, I'm really about the result. Whatever works, I don't really care much. Although of course, when I want to celebrate, let's celebrate. Bring all the beauty, the 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 symbolic tools, everything you can to make it more engaging. But if I want to go from A to B, again, I rely on logic and not beauty to
mhm.
take me there the fastest way possible, the safest way possible. And this is very important as well because some people they only care about the result and they don't think about being safe. Being safe is as important as the result. But I would say the result is the main thing, is the main reason. And again, some people that are very tradition based, they look at this and they say, you're doing it wrong. And, I created my own religion, my own mythology, my own temple, whatever. So no one can ever say that to me.
Yeah, right.
Seriously, because I do as I please, basically. So as long as it gives me the results I want, and I keep a percentage. I really need to, keep a diary to know what is working and what is not. And as almost as a scientist, of course, it's not science, but almost as a scientist, if this is not working, I'm not gonna bother trying this anymore because if you're doing the same thing expecting a different result, that's just very dumb. You should try something different and act accordingly. Some people they spend months and months trying to change the results without changing the strategy. And this is my opinion, of course. I won't spend time and effort and energy doing the same stuff. I want to see the fastest, the easiest, the safest way of
Hmm.
doing something rather than repeating what was said in a book written by someone else.
Right. Yeah.
So how does Freemasonry see this?
In getting results. Yeah, so I think, again, it's not that the Freemasons or Freemasonry would say you should adopt this particular belief to achieve these results, but it's more about, if you contemplate the symbols, if you contemplate the ritual, the lessons of the rituals, then you will transform yourself in some degree. And it's a lot of people. Well, let me step back. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago when I was really young. I used to think, all these people that have written their cult books and they must be doing okay in life, and so they must be making a lot of money from occult books, which I now know is not true. Authors of occult books do not make a lot of money. But so why are people who write books on the occult, why are they kind of doing okay in life? They seem to be, above average of what they achieve. And of course it's because if you're smart enough to write a book or several books, you're probably smart enough to navigate the world, right? That's just a manifestation of intelligence that you're using in other areas. And a lot of people think, oh, there's a lot of successful Freemasons, therefore becoming a Freemason, it must be what makes you successful. And that's not really the case, right? It's more that, well, if you contemplate the actual teachings of Freemasonry and the symbols and the process and all of the strange stuff, then first of all, it's going to make you more intelligent because you're more inquisitive, you're thinking, you're experiencing something that other people don't experience. You have a different frame of reference to other people. Other people, frame of reference is what did you see that drama on TV last night? I went to McDonald's on the weekend, then we saw this movie.
Oh,
Freemason, what's the I'm
I
not
was thinking
meaning to.
about I was thinking about this today. I was at the supermarket getting groceries, and I noticed that nowadays, even the fruit is cut for you.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
You have a variety of nuts, of
Yeah.
fruits, of everything. And even with this variety, everything is so easy handled
Yeah.
to you.
Yes.
If you think about what our ancestors went through
Yeah.
to get the fruit, to get nuts, we have a crazy variety. Even though we have all this, there are some people who still choose to eat McDonald's.
Yes.
There are some
Yes.
people who still make all the wrong choices for their health,
Hmm.
their life,
Yeah.
their reality, even though everything is so easy and handled to us. And I was embarrassed, not as humanity as a whole. And I also reached another conclusion, and I really wanted to bring it here. Aside from us being so entitled as a society, and aside from us having everything together, we also are now collectively becoming omniscient through our phones, because we know everything that's happening everywhere at the same time. We have access to the voice, the image of people who are already gone. We're
Yeah.
becoming gods,
Hmm.
and at the
Yeah.
same time, the majority of us are still dumb. They
Yeah.
don't know what to do with their lives. They never make the right choice for their lives, even though they know they should. We all know that we should eat healthy. We all know we should take care of ourselves, and they don't manage to even accomplish the basic of the basic. And that kept me thinking a lot about why are we behaving in this such entitled way as a society, even though we have a black mirror in our hands. So to come to the results again, to bring it back to the results, why are we accomplishing so little? And many of your books, they kind of talk about this, but I'd like you
Hmm.
to say something about this.
Yeah. So you're asking, why do people go to McDonald's? And maybe we should just say fast food restaurants, rather than picking on one, when they can get healthy food. And, I remember about 25 years ago, I was in the Cafe des Artistes having lunch, which is a, beautiful historic restaurant that was initially founded for artists in New York, and it has murals all over the walls. It's just an amazing place. And there was almost no one there. It was almost empty. And everybody, all the waiters were very super
Seriously?
nice. Yes, that's right. I mean, maybe I went slightly early, I don't know. But and I was sitting there eating by myself, and it was more than a fast food meal, but it wasn't that much more. But the quality was, much, much higher. And not just quality of food, but quality of the environment as well. And we tend to think that people are oppressed and they're being kept down. And of course, they'd all love to go to somewhere like the Café des Artistes. But the reality is, they actually wouldn't love to go there. They actually do love to go to fast food places. They do love to eat junk food, and they do love to consume junk media. And it is partly the way people are brought up, of course. Fast food restaurants target children, and then those children turn into, customers when they're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old still. So there's an element of that, but there is a point where you have to kind of break that that cycle that, okay, you were given fast food as a kid. You do not need to be eating junk food when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. You actually do have some agency. And as I was saying, with not just the Masonic ritual, but other traditions as well, chaos magic, even religious traditions, right? Although, people who are interested in magic tend to have a bit of an animus against religions often. Nevertheless, let's just take the Masonic ritual. So one person has a frame of reference, which was this drama they saw last night, the sports game they saw last night, the fast food restaurant they went to on the weekend. That's their world, that's their frame of reference, and then you have a Freemason whose frame of reference is that they went through the chamber of reflection where they meditated or contemplated their mortality in front of a skull, and then, or it's a symbol of a skull, and these strange alchemical elements, sulfur, salt, and mercury, and then they went through this strange ritual that's been around for 3 centuries. And all about the building of Solomon's temple, but it's all a metaphor for this spiritual building not made with hands. Well, you have a completely different reference. Now your world is infinitely larger than the average person, which means ultimately you're going to act in a very different way, or you should be acting in a different way. Of course, we all know there are Freemasons who don't act in a different way and will leave snooty, stupid comments because they're not that smart. But that's unfortunate. But for someone who can think, someone who's inquisitive, they're opening up that world. And, as I say, people look and say, well, George Washington was a Freemason, therefore it must be if you become a Freemason, you can become president. But actually, no, it's if you have this larger frame of reference, if you're the sort of person who's inquisitive enough to join a Masonic lodge, to think about what's going on, to meet interesting people, to read books, then you're also someone who's more likely to become successful in life.
Definitely. And also it takes courage.
Right, exactly.
Takes
That's right.
courage because you can be rejected,
Yes.
you don't know how the rituals work. There's
Right.
several secrets and you have to put effort, and there is no let's say an amount or a result that you can just guaranteed you're gonna reach. You're putting your faith, you're putting your time, you're putting your courage forward,
Yes.
and it takes a very kind of person to go through all that. Of course there are some people who just want the title
Yes, that's right.
and to show off
Yes.
the ring and the jewelry and
Yes.
whatever.
Yes, which you can
But I'm
buy, of course, even if you're not a Freemason. So that
oh,
means
there's
nothing.
also that. Yeah, it means nothing in the end of the day, the diploma, whatever. But for those who truly engage and for those who truly go through that, I really admire them because it takes courage.
Yes, well, and
Okay.
like life itself, you're heading into the unknown, right? Which is actually what life is. Just we don't realize that's what it is.
Next topic. It's about
Hmm.
magic and symbols. Symbolism.
Hmm.
You mentioned before, we in Chaos Magic, we love sigils,
Sigils, yes.
but also we love studying seals as well and its
Hmm.
symbols in general.
Yeah.
So, what about Freemasonry?
Right. Well, so Freemasonry has emblems, but they're often referred to as symbols, which are, so originally or early on, when the Masonic ritual was being practiced, early 18th century, there will often be a floor cloth or a tracing board. And the tracing board is a painting on which the emblems or symbols are painted. And so in the first degree, it's generally a scene of a black and white tile floor with three columns. And then there are other emblems or symbols such as a rough and a perfect ashlar, which means a, a, a rough rock and then a building block that has been carved from a rough block, and then tools such as a trowel and this kind of thing. So the Freemason, even in the ritual, there's a lecture after, and then would be looking at these symbols or these emblems, and then this would start to sink into we might say the unconscious. I'm not saying that that was necessarily the way it was thought of originally when they didn't really think about the unconscious, but nevertheless, the practical effect is you go through this peculiar ritual, then you're faced with this tracing board and you're hearing about the symbols that you're seeing. Of course, it's also, it's all going into the unconscious. And then, of course, later on, when you become a master mason, you might see these rituals over and over again as other people are initiated. Yeah, and so you can and memorization is a big part of Freemasonry as well. And so, memorizing something also it should be going into your unconscious mind. Of course, every Freemason has encountered Freemasons who know the ritual word for word, but do not understand what it means at all and couldn't tell you. But most Freemasons who learn it would be able to explain this is what it means, at least on some kind of elementary level. So it's more a process of of allowing these things to be absorbed into your mind. I think, I would say you mentioned sigils. Of course, Austin Osman Spare, who originated sigil magic, was an artist, and rather like Freemasonry, where we have these symbols where the meaning is embedded in the object. It's not just an object. With Spare's artwork as well, there's some kind of meaning that's embedded in his art. These sort of strange creatures that are rising up through the artwork, has some kind of meaning, right? They represent something, and are supposed to be an embodiment of something as well.
Yes, definitely. We also do lots of mantra, and nowadays with the servants, every servant and every astral servant has a mantra. So we also memorize a lot because
Mm,
when every day you go through the Chaos Rosary, doing 108 mantras for each servant, eventually you will memorize. And also with the hyper sigils and the songs with the mantras and different songs, different mantras, you memorize with songs is easier as well. But I think this part of the memorization is not as required in chaos magic as it is in, but it
right.
has become more
Yeah.
traditional, has
Yeah.
become more ritualistic in the sense for chaos magic for nowadays. I mean, we have
Hmm.
more of a structure because you know what, another thing as well, uh when you get the results and you understand what really works, then you have a formula.
Right.
Once you have the formula, you're gonna replicate it for different areas of your
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
And that's where tradition comes to exist. But this is for
Yes.
another video.
Hmm.
This is
Hmm.
for this is for another video. So the next topic. There is a saying magic to dare to will and
Hmm.
to keep silent.
Right.
So please, what about the secrets of Freemasonry? Come and tell us all. Do you have
Yes.
secrets, truly?
Yeah, well, so yes and no, right? So a lot of people say, "Oh, they're keeping the secrets from us," but actually, Freemasons have been at the well, have been the only people for a long, long time actually recording Masonic rituals and publishing them. Yes, for other Freemasons, but you can certainly find them. 35 years ago, I came across Masonic rituals and read them, and I didn't really understand them, but they were certainly very
That's the
intriguing.
point. It's
Yeah.
secret because they can't understand.
Mhm. Right. And
It takes the
why can't
initiation.
you? Yeah. So why can't you understand it? Partly because I suppose it's partly like reading music rather than hearing it. So that's part of it. But yeah, it's not that, for example, I mentioned the 24-inch gauge as an emblem or symbol of Freemasonry, and I explained what it was. It's not that, oh, that's secret and I can't tell you, and now I'm going to be murdered, right? That's not the case, right? I can tell you every single symbol in Freemasonry and explain what it means. It's not a problem. But it's secret in the sense that, a doctor or a surgeon can explain to me how to do surgery and I can intellectually know what it is, but I could not do it. I would mess it up, right? I shouldn't do it. But or someone can explain, well, I studied art, but I could explain how to do a painting to someone, but they wouldn't be able to paint. It's the secret is revealed in the process, right? So you can know intellectually how to paint a painting, but it doesn't mean you're good at painting, right? That takes years. And then, if you practice painting, for 10 years, then you'll produce something good. But it takes until that point, and you'll also produce something that represents you. And Freemasonry is like that. You have to contemplate it for a long time, and then you come to an understanding, and your understanding won't be the same as everyone else. It's not that you're trying to be unique, it's just that we are all different. We all have different perspectives.
That's a very important point you made right there. And this is something people miss all the time because, when we were studying deeply Osman Spes' work.
Mm,
It got everything got translated in Portuguese, and you could
mm,
see, and the person who translated it is a Sith, and you could clearly see the influence of the religion in their translations and their perspective, and kind of I would say misinterpreting the what a spare was calling karma and thinking is
mm,
the same as in the Sith religion, which is not, but that's not the point. The point is everybody says, oh, spare is so difficult. No, because it's actually pretty easy. And it is because just see from his perspective, but
mm.
try not to emulate what he's coming from because you're not him.
Yeah,
He
that's right.
was pouring his unconscious mind. So everybody's trying to decode the alphabet of the Zion. No, 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 you're
Hmm.
not gonna decode this. It's his mind, it's his unconscious. The point is
Yeah,
not to decode his unconscious mind, his primordial inner God. The point is for you to create your own. Create your
exactly.
own alphabet of the Zai, create your own paradigm, create your own sigils, your own art, your own hyper sigils. So everybody was super hyper fixated in decoding spare, which made it impossible then to understand his message. And again and again and again, we see that with religion. They're so hyper fixated into, uh, memorize what Christ said. They cannot embody what is it to be Christ, the
Right.
Christ-like mentality or Buddha-like mentality, whatever it is,
Yeah.
the prophet, you know.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy also this to dare to will to keep silent because sometimes we can spend here 10 hours discussing every little
Hmm.
topic. How do you say, to dissect every single detail in the
Hmm.
book of preference, and still it wouldn't be enough. Sometimes when you silent your mind, and this is something I love with Chaos Magic and Spare, it is the neither neither position, neither this
Hmm.
nor that, in which you silent your mind and you stop trying to interpret everything so hard and to understand and discover the secret so hard. And soon when you actually can do that, and neither this nor that, I'm not waiting for the result, I'm not craving for the result. At the same time, I care about the result, but I at the same time I'm detached from the lust for the result. So neither this nor that. When you have this neither neither clear in your mind is when you fully understand what it is about. And sometimes you read something, it doesn't make sense. When you relax, that comes clear in your mind and
Yeah.
you, okay, now I understand.
Hmm. That's
so
right.
so at the same time it should be logical, and
Yes.
at the same time it should neither this nor that. All right.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well, if you go back to the medieval period, Christian theologians, understood that there was ratio and intellectus, right? So ratio is rational thinking, and then intellectus is contemplation, where you observe, not even observe, somehow you absorb and are absorbed in the divine. And so, you mentioned, sort of letting go of a particular thought. And even in Christianity or in Benedictine monasticism, there's a practice of lectio divina where you would open a Bible, read a passage, and then you think about it, and then you sort of abide in God, essentially, let's say not thinking rationally anymore, just, being. And then, of course, ideas come to you. And of course, today it doesn't necessarily have to be the Bible, but that's where it began in Benedictine monasticism. But, if you think about something, logically for quite a while, and then you relax your mind, all kinds of ideas come to you. And one of the
Wait,
problems
take a
with
shower. Take a shower
you
and
can take a
everything makes
shower.
sense.
Yes, or
Everything
go
makes
for a
sense.
walk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things that has happened today with reading, you're an author, this people will say, I read your book in 2 hours. And I know that yes, your eyes passed over the words in 2 hours. But you didn't read it. There's nothing, you can't remember anything that's in there. You didn't think about anything. Reading is you read, you read a passage or you read a page, and then you think about it, and then you let your imagination take over, and then you begin to understand what is being said. It's not
It
just
takes maturation.
absorbing words.
Takes maturation. Is that a word in English?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just throw words like I hope it exists
Yes,
somewhere.
it does. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic.
But yeah, so in regard to secrecy, why is there secrecy? Of course, I mean, of course, there are practical reasons, right? If you went back today, I don't think anyone cares about, magic is not, well, some people care. I mean, maybe if you're in a small town or a village or something, you don't want to be saying you're doing chaos magic, but certainly a century or so ago it was more dangerous. But I think there's another practical but unspoken aspect of this, and that is the sort of self-transformative aspect. What do people normally keep secret? People will normally keep secret things that they're a bit ashamed of, or they did that they don't like, or that are embarrassing. And then suddenly, you join some, let's say, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and you think, oh, wow, this is amazing. It's so glamorous, all this Egyptian symbolism. And I'd love to tell my friends all about this.
No,
And I
don't.
feel
Don't.
exactly, but then you don't. But then you're sort of, in a sense, you're replacing all these secrets that are embarrassing or things you've done that you don't like. You're kind of pushing that out, and the secret that you now contain are the things that is best about you, so that you would
I like
love to
that.
say. Yeah, and so when you reflect on the secrets that you keep, they're actually really good things that you would love to share, and that's really why why there are secrets. It's not because ooh, it would be so frightening to people to know about some element of the Masonic ritual. Okay, we have discussed elements of it, but the reason you keep it secret or you don't go around telling everyone all the time is, well, first of all, you'd sound like a crazy person, but a lot of, people convert to religions to do that. So it prevents you from doing that, but it also means that, the secrets you're keeping are things that you actually like and would like to share if you could. And so, that's very
You're
different
wise.
to, well, thank you. But,
No,
it's a very different
sorry to cut
quality.
you.
Yeah, it's a very
Okay.
different quality. If you have someone who all the secrets in their heart, let's say, are things that they're ashamed of, they don't like, things that happen, which doesn't even mean things that they did. I mean, maybe they're ashamed of things that happened to them. That's what they're carrying around with them. That's very different to someone else who the secrets in their heart are, look at this amazing thing that I'm a part of. That person is going to be completely different in the way they act in life and what I don't want to make it about achievement or results or whatever, but what they achieve in
You
life or
can.
just how they feel, you know. Yeah. Although no one says that, and I'm sure no one sat around thinking, I know if we have a secret, then it will, expunge the sort of negative secrets, and then we'll have a positive one. But then, nevertheless, that is the effect, right? And that's why a lot of people in the realm of, magic or chaos magic or Freemasonry seem to have a lot more energy and a lot more sort of joie de vivre than people who are not in it necessarily. So, I mean, if you look at the occult world, the number of, artists and creative people in it, percentage-wise, is very, very high. I mean, they're massively overrepresented. So,
Why is that? It's
well, I think,
the next
yeah,
topic is about the genius in
of the
magic.
genius. Yes, yes.
Yes. Do you believe in the higher self or the sacred guardian angel or the inner demon, diamond?
Daemon, yes, daimon or daemon, yeah. So yeah, so daemon meaning a genius. Yes, well, I certainly think that there is a higher genius or genius in us, absolutely. And partly on a sort of more mundane level, the genius is, what we can achieve. Einstein was a genius, Austin Spare was a genius, and we want to be a genius like that in our own way. But yes, but there may be something beyond that, which is sort of more transcendent and that, attracts certain things to us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely believe that there is a higher self, and we
Hmm.
should always contemplate and visualize what this higher self would do, not only when we doubt ourselves or we are uncertain, but also in the smallest things. For instance, understanding that nowadays the fruit is cut and handled to us,
Hmm.
because it prevents us to be entitled. It prevents us from just taking everything as guaranteed, because nothing is ours, everything is rented and nothing is guaranteed. So it's very important to see this higher self as both as the genius, the co-creator, the one
Hmm.
who can achieve our highest goals and become our better selves, but also the one who is detached from this idea that we own everything. If you can keep these two paradigms and reach the neither land of, yes, I can co-create the craziest riches in the world. I can live the soft life. I can be this and that. And at the same time that you can believe this with your heart and envision yourself and then come get this genius to work for you and with you, not against you, as the majority of the people do. Um, and at the same time remain detached and understand that this is an experience and nothing in this life is guaranteed. We start by appreciating, we start to appreciate success much more, because there are some people who are successful in life but they don't appreciate, oh, the here are the fruit, whatever, I can always have this,
Hmm.
here is this, here and that. They don't appreciate the love they have, the people they have in life. They're always searching for something else, something
Yeah.
to give them this feeling.
Yeah, but I feel like this is the difference between experts and geniuses as well. That someone can be very successful in a field, in some particular field, art or banking or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, and partly because maybe there's they have a personality that will climb over people. Maybe they have some particular, maybe they really do have a skill that's useful and can be applied. But I think genius is almost the opposite of an expert. And a genius pushes beyond things and disrupts things, and is disliked usually while he or she is alive, and has enemies. And it does something completely different. Spare was a genius, but he also died in poverty because his art was kind of frightening and, maybe ugly to a lot of people and it's very strange. And how could you sell this weird art with these spirits sort of rising up with, horned animals and, strange symbols or sigils around it? This is not clearly not appealing to a mass market. So yeah, so it's true, true. And you meet these people who are wealthy and they're always miserable and nothing satisfies them. But I think on the flip side of that, the genius, someone like Spare, who I'm sure would have appreciated more money, but nevertheless was able to live in poverty and create this incredible work and was able
What
to
feeds
persist with
them is
that.
different.
Yeah, of course, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you were talking about how even, fruit and vegetables are cut for us in the supermarket. And that's true. And today, of course, with AI, we can ask it things and it will give us information and it's all kind of done for us. We don't really need to think the thoughts. AI will think them for us by taking different things off of the net and compiling them. But geniuses begin with doing the most basic work. Spare created amazing artwork because he learned how to draw meticulously, right? And even Picasso, who people think is this weird, artist who did very sort of abstract and strange and primitive art, could draw and paint beautifully if you look at his earlier work. So,
Yes.
so in a sense, what's being taken from us, from AI or from the supermarket or whatever it may be, is doing the basic stuff. But we can never become a genius unless we do the basics. So something is being actually taken from us with all this convenience, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And talking about that, I need to ask because in some videos I use the word superior, high ranking, and all of that. Are Freemasons or even chaos magicians elitists? Do you think we see
Yeah.
ourselves better? Are we better than other people?
Mhm.
Do
Yeah.
we see
So
ourselves like this?
yes, well, we should. I mean, there's a lot of videos today on YouTube saying, "Oh, it's terrible. You mustn't. If someone wants to join and become this particular, if they want to join the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn or become a Wiccan or whatever, you must let them because there must be no sort of gateway to entry that's elitist." And and there, I was watching a video a long time ago, but it's quite memorable. I should not mention the person's name, and I've forgotten it anyway. But where she's reviewing Frater UD's sigil magic and complaining about how dangerous this is. It's like, yes, it is
What?
dangerous. It's the occult. If you don't want danger, don't be messing around with this stuff.
No.
Just go to
Turn on the
church or
TV.
yeah, watch TV, do something else. That yes, it's dangerous. That you got it. Well done. Amazing.
Yes, I
Yeah.
actually. No, go on, go on.
But and so there is this attempt to kind of pedestrianize and suburbanize magic and everything else, and to make everything palatable, and everything must be for everyone, and oh, we mustn't exclude anyone, and no one must feel excluded. But this is the opposite of the genius. And in a sense, this kind of attitude we should actually see as an attack on genius. No, we want to embody our genius, whatever it is, whether it's writing books or it's painting paintings or it's making music or it's, I don't know, it's setting up some company that's doing something that's never been done before, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, but we want to embody our genius because we want to embody who we truly are to the nth degree and in the best and purest way possible. Sorry, that's not everyone.
Amazing. I actually have a very funny story about little Lua. I loved what you said. So when I was growing up as a very traditional Catholic little girl, right? So you grow up listening about Jesus, and what is the main quality they try to teach us? It's to be humble, or being
Right.
humble
Yeah.
is the main quality one can have,
Yeah.
is the highest you can achieve. One should be humble about everything and everyone, whatever,
Hmm.
right? So auntie was raising me. She said, "Oh, we're going to go to stay for the holiday in your uncle's apartment." And mind you, he was very wealthy, but she said, you should write him a little note or letter, because I always loved writing, whatever, and give it to him as a token of appreciation. And I wrote this letter, whatever. And in the end, I said, "Thank you for inviting us to stay in your humble apartment." And my auntie and my uncle, they read the letter and they looked at me as I did something awful. How dare you to say that this apartment, which was very wealthy, by the way, was humble? What do you mean? Do you want princess treatment? And I was shocked. I was shocked. I didn't mean to say the apartment wasn't beautiful. No, on the contrary, so many tapestries, whatever. It
Mm.
was just that I thought saying something was humble was the best compliment one could give. I was mistaken, and
Yeah.
in that moment, I started understanding that society is very difficult to navigate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, because they say one thing, but do they truly want that? Do
No.
they truly want to be humble or to be seen as humble? No.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, in the reality, we all want this exclusive feeling, and this is
That's
how they
right.
get to sell
Yeah.
so many luxurious bags. The bag itself might be the same value
Hmm.
monetarily as another one, but
Right.
because of its brand
Yeah.
exclusivity, the history, whatever, it costs so much more. And what do you
Hmm.
really want? The humble bag or the
Yeah.
luxurious Chanel, whatever?
Right.
So I
For
learned
sure.
a very important lesson as a little one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the humility, of course, is not just important to Christianity. It's important in the West because we've absorbed all of these Christian ideas and secularized them and then infused them back into paganism and in other spiritual traditions as well. And then we think
It's
that we're
so
really doing
anti-pagan.
paganism. Of course it is. It's exactly anti-pagan. But I come across a lot of spiritual New Age Rosicrucian type people who will, we're very placid. I'm always suspicious of people who talk very slow and placidly, But anyway, they always do. They always speak like that, and they always talk about how we must, destroy our ego and we
I
are
know,
one. I
not
am
me.
you and you are me. No, but they're complete hypocrites. These people that I am you and you are me, and it's illusion to see this as different things. Like what do you do? What's the first thing these people do when they get home at night? They lock their door. If we're all one, who are you keeping out? If you're the beggar on the street and the criminal and this kind of thing, why are you locking these people out? Let them in. They're you. Give them your money. It's their money too. They never do that. But so this sort of, this idea of humility in our world is a way of saying, look how humble I am. I've
It's a
achieved this, and
performance.
yet it's a performance. Exactly. It's exactly what it is. And it's a performance that's meant to signal, look how much I've achieved spiritually or whatever it may be. I'm the top dog. I'm more humble than you. That's what it is. And personally, I think
Exactly.
it's disgusting. I'd rather someone just tell me that they're great.
I rather as well.
I
Yeah,
think that's more humble.
absolutely. Tell me who you truly are or who you think
Exactly.
you are than to pretend you're something else, something
Yes.
you're
Well,
not.
to slightly manipulate a phrase from Milo Ducat, it's all in your ego. You just have no idea how big your ego is.
Yes, I love this one. I love this quote. And one last topic is about the stars. We have
Yes.
stars
Mm.
as the main symbol. The
Yeah.
Chaos Star, which is 8 points
Hmm.
with some arrows,
Mm.
and we have the Blazing Star. Tell me a little bit about the Blazing Star in
Yes.
Freemasonry.
Yes, well, I think it's legitimate to say that the Blazing Star probably is a forerunner to the Chaos Star. I don't think that it would be quite as important to chaos magic if it wasn't for the blazing star in Freemasonry. And not that Peter Carroll or anyone else decided to take that from Freemasonry. It's just that these things are kind of difficult to disentangle. So, the OTO and the Golden Dawn has influenced, probably all magic in the Western world in the modern era since they emerged. But Freemasonry shaped them to a very large degree as well. But if we look back to the 18th century, we find that the blazing star is depicted in one way that's a little bit different now, and that is very often now it's a hexagram or seal of Solomon or a six-pointed star. Whereas during the early 18th century, you often find it depicted as a pentagram. And both the hexagram and pentagram are very important to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, of course. But we might ask, why would it be a pentagram? Isn't that some spooky witchcraft symbol? Well, yes, it's a symbol of Wicca, of course, today. But it has a whole history. If you read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the Middle English, I think it's 13th century English tale, the pentagram is spoken about in there. And there it represents the five wounds of Christ and the five digits of the hand and some other things as well. And so it's sort of changed throughout history. Freemasons, I don't know if this is historically the case, but Freemasons certainly believe that the pentagram represented health to the Pythagoreans in ancient Greece. And of course, in Renaissance and before that, it also was seen to represent the golden mean of architecture. This particular equation that shows up in throughout architecture and is embodied in the pentagram as well. So it means health. It means originally or early on it had some kind of Christian meaning, and it also was associated with architecture. Of course, you also find it in Agrippa with the male human spread out into the shape of a pentagram as well. So, and all of these things probably fed into Freemasonry to a certain degree or to varying degrees. Oh,
Yes, definitely. I think the star symbol is very important is uh in every culture actually. And in my
mm,
book Vox, which I'm gonna add to my grimoire, the grimoire that
mm,
I want to launch next year. I talk a lot about the symbolism of the Chaos Star. So originally it came from the Eternal Champion stories from the Michael Moorcock.
Moorcock, yeah,
So that was the Chaos Star with the 8 points,
yeah,
and the number 8, of course, symbolizes uh, eternal, because if you see, it's the infinite symbol.
mm,
Um, and you can see it in so many cultures as well. And for me, the 8 pointed star, it has to do with the Ishtar star from the
mm,
Babylon,
yeah,
and I personally really, really love it. But you have it in Buddhism as well, you have in
yes,
Egypt, even
yeah,
in Native America as well. You can see some symbols that represent, the star, because it is, when we think about the star, we think about shining guidance,
yeah,
in the eight, in our, it's a very important number. The five elements as well, if you have the 5 pointed star. So they're
yeah,
both very important, and I personally love the number 8, and I personally love the Kale star, and
hmm
but I love the pentagram as well.
yeah,
So now we just wanted to tell you, the person watching us, that we are starting something new. We're starting our channel and our Chaos Magic course, in which we're gonna talk about everything Chaos Magic, but much more than that as well, here in Lucid Alchemy. Starting every week, we're gonna launch a new video, and feel free to participate by sending us topics you would love to watch about. Send us questions as well, and also please subscribe, share the content with your friends, and keep an open mind, because in the occult I notice everyone want to teach everyone, and everyone has an opinion, and it's okay to bring your opinion. just do it very respectfully, please, because here we want to talk directly with the ones with high ranking position, the ones who can understand us, where we come from. So please take everything with a grain of salt and think from your perspective. Of course, you are more than welcome to share your thoughts. Just let's be respectful. Okay? Angel, what would you like to share now? I'm super excited.
Okay, well, thanks for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you.